Hello, everyone. Welcome. Hi, Jamaica. Hi, Patricia. Hi, Andrea. So many friends. Thanks for coming. Nice to see you all.
Howdy, everyone. Thanks for making this.
We'll give folks a few minutes
Hey,
to.
Michelle.
Hi, everyone. Hi,
Hi, Michelle.
friends.
Blue skies.
Yeah,
Blue
wow.
skies.
Hi,
Hooray in San Francisco.
Claire and Aaron. Nice to see y'all. Thanks for coming.
Am I
Oh,
showing up on screen? I can't see my little self view. Am I
you
here?
are.
Yeah, great.
You're here.
Great. That's how I like it. Okay, I might give it just one more minute and then we'll get it rolling and invite people to share in chat. What brought you here? What are you curious about? How'd you hear about this? And maybe where are you calling in from? And I'll get rolling shortly. Okay, let's do it. Welcome, everyone. My name's Tyler Wakefield, and I'll be holding this space for today. And I'm here representing BioFi Project, and we are the ones kind of initiating this experiment in this space, but really want to orient towards this being something that's held just beyond us, and that we're inviting a handful of other orgs into holding collectively and moving with. And so this is the first of what we hope might be many Trans-Bioregional Coordination Circles. And this is an experiment, and this experiment is designed to really tend to the information flow across colleagues and service providers and bioregional organizers, all of whom are often overlapping and rubbing elbows with each other and meeting in certain physical and digital spaces, and actually just give that relational network a chance to kind of see itself and be seen by those who are wanting to know how to relate to it. And I want to be clear that the time we have designed for today is not going to be a space for us to really go deep into any particular coordination with these organizations or strategizing that may start to surface. But this is really meant to just surface and make transparent all the work that's going on and help folks in this network orient to that. And the last thing I want to say before we get rolling is um, I'm not holding this, and I'm requesting that we don't hold this as any kind of official coalition that has a purpose beyond just sharing what we're up to in this space. There's so many projects, there's so many organizations, there's so many people doing amazing work in the bioregional space, and we're not attempting to draw a circle around that and say that this is that. We're just saying that we have warm existing collaborative relationships with a lot of the organizations here, and we want to make sure those working on the ground, as well as us in these organizations, know how to play well together. And to support the kind of evolution of this space, hopefully, if we host another one of these next month, it'll be a different organization in this collection hosting that call, and we'll rotate, and they'll have a chance to invite in other organizations. So there's some fluidity and flexibility to everything we're doing here. I think that's enough of my preamble, and it's so nice to see you all. I'm going to put in the chat the order of presentations that we'll hear from today. Come on. And each org will have 5 minutes. And I'm asking everyone who's presenting to actually get out your phone and before you start speaking, set a timer for yourself so I don't have to interrupt you. That's a role I'm very used to and I'm comfortable in, but I don't think it's the most fun for the viewers or myself all the time. So I'm asking for y'all to share that responsibility with me. We'll hear from all the organizations, and then we'll give a chance for those organizations to kind of sense make together for about 20 minutes. And then after that, we'll open up to question and answers from the audience here. So that's what I got. Thanks so much for being here. And let's get rolling. I'm curious, let's see, Open Future Coalition. Who from that team is that you, Jamaica?
I think we're gonna switch off.
Great.
I've got our slides here and can get us started. Thanks so much for having us today. So we founded Open Future Coalition at the beginning of 2021 under the premise that at a time where there's so much talk around how we need to innovate and solve all of these complex social and ecological challenges that we're collectively facing, that those solutions are often already here and they're stewarded by local communities and at the grassroots, as represented by many of you here on this call. And so our commitment from that time has really been to connect and resource and make visible those existing solutions. And we do that by cultivating the development of social, technical, and financial tools, often taking tools and resources that have traditionally been reserved for enterprise and making them as accessible as we can to grassroots community leaders and networks. And so today we'll bring you through a couple of examples of those efforts. We have a platform called Open Impact that helps address the coordination around some of these challenges on the ground. We've worked with organizations and networks in over 70 countries. We offer tools for things like connecting and coordinating small farmers with one another and delivering technical assistance and connecting them with buyers, ranging to the coordination and training and delivery of large-scale ecological restoration efforts. And we do that through access to tools for communications like shared news feeds, calendars, discussions, for coordination like workflows and task management, as well as for knowledge and best practice sharing. So we have some tools around publishing, around sharing impacts, sharing kind of the outcomes of those efforts and helping to connect them with resourcing. Just a couple quick updates from this past year. We've recently launched a workflow and dashboard builder. And so it's a self-serve tool that allows folks to showcase both historic and real-time data connected to project workflows, quantitative and qualitative. And we've also supported the publishing of over 1,500 resources by our partners. And so we welcome those on this call to ask how to get involved with becoming a resource partner and leverage some of those tools. We've also more recently started partnering directly with networks to help them showcase portfolios of resourceable projects to help those who are looking to both get involved, whether as a resource provider, financial or non-financial, or as a collaborator, to help better see the field, whether it's as a network, whether it's as a region, whether it's as a sector, and help coordinate those efforts many to many. And all of these instances are interoperable. And so we're really keen to collaborate with more networks on those types of efforts as well. Over to you, Jamaica.
Thanks, Katie. It's good to be with you all. One of the things we wanted to showcase around our social efforts is we do a lot of sectoral and place-based convening, and one of the showcase examples of that is our Regional Resilience Fellowship Program. We just finished year one of this program with 21 fellow organizations in 16 countries across 35 project sites. We supported them with coordination, project management, reporting, documentation, program delivery, and things like storytelling, and allowing them to have the opportunity to create project portfolios and to report on their impact and tell the story of their incredible work. So this is a program that we also support with individual work plans for each of our fellows, but we also support coordination and cross-pollination across our various fellows. So we would do these calls that allow the fellows to have peer learning and opportunities to share across various contexts, which was a really highlight of this experience, was growing a network of these place-based initiatives that are supporting each other in the learning forward and the solutions. We are actually in our round of curation and open nominations for our next fellowship, which we're really excited about. We'll be kicking it off this fall, and I'll be going through the next year, November to November. I'll put a little chat in there in just a moment. I'll put the link to that. And yeah, I think that's plenty on this one for now.
Great. And from a funding perspective, we've realized over the last couple of years that a lot of our efforts have been really filling a critical pre-development gap within the space, where a lot of folks that we work with who've traditionally been philanthropically funded are more ready to absorb other types of multi-capital resourcing. And so we've been continuing to convene around how we can support regional and sectoral funders and funds and being able to make decisions around the allocation of those resources. So you can find out a little bit more about that on our site.
And for next steps, I'll be putting some things here in the chat. So we are open and available to partner. We're open for network partnerships and becoming a resource partner, which is using the tools to continue to grow your own network reach or share your resources. We have co-development partnerships available and are also doing a lot of convening. And so we support topical and place-based convenings. We come in and help with the strategy, the design, and the facilitation of convenings. So we can talk about that if that's something useful. And we're also opening our practitioner and developer community in the coming year. And so that's really exciting and an opportunity to look at interoperability and co-development across some of our shared platforms within this network. So we can have discussions about that. That was my timer. The last thing I'll say is the fellowship is an open opportunity. So I'm going to put in the chat the link to join the fellowship or share that nomination with projects or networks that you think might be a good fit. We're also doing a showcase salon that shares a bit about that particular fellowship. And so I put that in the chat. And then lastly, you can join us over at openfuturecoalition.org to sign up as either get on our newsletter to learn more about our work or to write us at collaborate at Open Future Coalition to collaborate with us. Thanks.
Thank you both.
That's fast, Tyler. Thank you.
It is. You packed it in. Thanks so much for the clear presentation and all the links. Next up, we'd have Regen Network / Foundation. Oftentimes, is that you, Austin? Amazing. And if you could set a timer for 4.5 minutes, and then you'll have a 30-second breathing room there. I think that'll work best.
It might take me 30 seconds to adjust my timer 4 minutes and 30 seconds. So
yeah.
Okay.
That's a good chance for everyone who will be presenting to get that ready.
Hey everyone, I'm Austin. I'll be speaking on behalf of Regen Network and Regen Foundation in total as a joint entity today. Can y'all see the screen? My screen share? Okay, great. Yeah, so I'm Austin. I'm the executive director at Regen Foundation. I also run a project called River Computer. I'm not going to give like a comprehensive intro to Regen Network right now, but maybe 2 projects that are alive that I think are interesting and relevant for this community. Yeah, for maybe the last 4 years that I've been working at Regen, we've been really interested in this blended approach of biophysical commoning of digital frameworks and bioregional commons like integrated together. There's not really a good word for it, but I'm going to like share some lessons and learnings on doing governance in what we might call cyber ecological commons. And it's not really a body of theory. It's more like looking back in the rearview mirror. What have we learned? So yeah, in roughly sequential process over the past several years, we've been developing a framework where we build incremental readiness or capacity for grassroots organizations to be able to interact with like larger protocols, funding systems, allocation processes, governance frameworks, etc. And I think that in a way we found a niche in like the first mile or like the first millimeter of partnering with grassroots organizations. And it's followed a kind of format that's becoming formalized over time. So you don't start anything unless you actually build a relationship. And we go through a process of supporting people to make addresses, whether those are WhatsApp usernames or blockchain addresses. And through the process of creating identities, you can begin to build corpuses or through places of physical or digital gathering, the ability to consent to say yes, like free, prior, and informed consent to participating in a partnership in the first place, which might evolve into the ability to make propositions, allocations in the form of, say, participatory budgeting, and then perhaps taking in input like sensing information and making verification or producing claims out of sense information, and then into higher order complex like interactions. And so this like incremental model of building capacity has been something that's been really central to our work for quite some time. And I see it as a sort of like 3-part loop that continuously feeds back upon itself, where a group constitutes itself, it creates a kind of membrane or a boundary. It has the ability to sense either internally or externally around either through governance processes or taking sensing information, and then making actions and interventions based off of that. And this like constituting, sensing, and enacting loop has developed into what's sort of like a digital governance framework for cyber physical commons. And we've been like didn't set out to do this, but this has like been a really helpful way for us to be able to construct and incrementally build capacity with partnership organizations. So an exciting thing about that is we're putting this together into a book. We're releasing a book in the fall. I hope you all get a chance to see it. I will absolutely share it with as many people as possible. And part of the project is to actually take this, what kind of turns out into a governance SDK software development kit, and turning it into a system of cards that can be like used on a tabletop as a sort of like workshop format. in order to support capacity for practicing governance in physical and digital domains with grassroots organizations. Um, we work with a lot of different organizations. These are the ones that we're explicitly working with this exact digital governance framework on, all within the last 2 years or so. So there's kind of like an active cohort of developing this. I'll talk about the second thing pretty concisely, but I'll leave that there for now. If you know me or if you've talked to any of my colleagues or people who I work with recently, you'll know that we're really interested in developing a kind of data model for modular impact attestations, ways of creating claims around environmental impact, which enfranchise rather than alienate local organizations who are doing critical work. And is sort of built off of this idea that any like larger, higher order construct, whether it's a certification, a credit, a sort of an impact report, are all effectively aggregations of claims around human environmental interaction. And that's my 30 second. So yeah, we've been working actively in integrating two really big models in the modular impact accounting space, the resource description framework, in the Ethereum attestation space to be able to develop like new frameworks to do peer validation and verification for environmental impact. And there's a ton of cool things that you can do with it. So I'll leave it at that. But if you want to reach out to me, say hi at Austin at region.foundation. That was really fast. Blah. Thanks for listening.
Thanks so much, Austin.
Mhm.
Wonderful. Bill and Andrea at R3.0 are up next, and please get your 4.5 minute timer ready to go.
Great. Thanks so much, Tyler. And just hit my timer for 2.5 minutes. I'm going to present the first half and then hand over to Andrea Farias, our research fellow. And we're not going to touch everything on R3.0, but sort of some select things that we think are relevant here. So the first, broadly, we're going to look at stewarding pluriversal bioregional coherence. So let's unpack those terms. The first is pluriversal, and this is a term that you can see on the left. Ashish Kotari is a co-editor of this book on the pluriverse. And he says that the world is a pluriverse and incredible diversity of cultures, ecologies, economies, polities, worldviews, and so on. To try to govern it with one universal set of laws and rules is, to my mind, a recipe for erasure, howsoever well-intentioned. And so we at R3.0 really take up from this. Our goal is to support coherence through relationality in the bioregioning movement by prioritizing pluriversality, and that through doing that through cross-cultural learning. And we hope that that creates a sense of solidarity in the bioregional movement. The second notion of coherence, we often use this slide on the physics of coherence, which is that when waves are in phase, the blue and the green ones, you can see that they sort of double their amplification, and they are constructive in scientific speak. But when they're out of phase, you can see that the red line flat lines. So they essentially cancel each other out. So right now, our work is really kind of focusing on trying to avoid decoherence, if you will. And one way that we're supporting this is through what we're calling our conference coherence circle around our conference that's coming up in a couple of weeks. But really, in our meetings with that group, we've decided to look at potentially having a broader scope of coherence for the movement broadly. And so you can see that we're trying to hit a diversity of folks in this space. Last thing I'll say here and then hand it over to Andrea is that we're hosting confluences. There's about 45 bioregional confluences in 6 continents that are going to be meeting in person alongside our online conference on the 9th through 11th of September. And so we're working with them to focus on what governance means in each of their places. And with that, I'm going to hand it over to Andrea to finish out this slide and go forward from there.
Yeah, sure. So in order to do that, we actually did some convening calls and some workshops with the Confluence organizers. with also Benjamin Life from Open Civics and Patricia, who are here on this call, and Liz Berry from MetaGov, to actually talk about what governance means and start to document what is happening in terms of governance in all these different places in order to start weaving this documentation into a bioregional knowledge commons and to support that kind of coming together in a way that we're helping each other move forward. Next slide. In terms of bioregional knowledge commons, this is kind of a broader strand of work that we've been pursuing. It's built on some research that I did last year and this year, kind of exploring what bioregional knowledge commons might mean and how they might work. And from that was born kind of a community of inquiry and practice with 50 plus practitioners in the bioregional space. Where we have two subgroups. We're documenting bioregional practices, so looking at practices and what patterns emerge from those, and exploring technological interoperability. So we really want to kind of build this as a collective and communal space where we can document what's happening, learn from each other, and kind of like help bioregional practitioners multiply their kind of their impact in their local place. Okay, so that's 4.5 minutes. Next slide. And so there's been kind of a couple of let's say prototypes of this. The most recent prototype is just starting to actually document some of these practices. So I have kind of started to create a directory of lots of different initiatives, lots of different practices from bioregional organizers around the world. And we're hoping to work together with the larger community of practice to actually to look at those practices and see what patterns are emerging from that, so we can create an ontology of bioregional practices. And I'll leave it there for now. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Andrea and Bill. If you can share that slide deck in the chat, please do. Look like there's some great links on there. Matthew and Ma Earth, over to you. Please set your
Hi, team.
5-minute timer.
Great. Matthew here from Ma Earth, along with my colleague Sophia. We don't have slides, so we're going to keep it simple. We started this journey with a podcast and a learning series called The Regeneration Will Be Funded, essentially exploring this space of regenerative finance and interviewing folks from around the world, including folks here on this call. And we took those learnings and we've essentially been in the lab building an application or a platform. And the value proposition is quite simple. What we're hearing very loud and clear is we need to connect more capital to grassroots nature projects, and grassroots nature projects, including the bioregional organizers who support them, the evaluators on the ground. But we have, such a huge funding gap. And so our inquiry is how to build these digital tools to kind of scale the movement and scale the efforts. We're going to be running this through a cadence of funding rounds. And our thinking is to do it every 6 months. And the key thing to know, about how we're starting is through grants and traditional philanthropy. We think over time, if successful, we'll move up the capital stack into other forms of financing, but really starting there. And we'll be embracing some of the things that Austin spoke to around Web3, digital attestations, impact claims, certificates, and so forth. So there's a roughly team size of 7 of us now. We're working as fast and feverishly on the application as we can. Probably won't be live with our next funding round until early 2026. And in the meantime, my colleague Sophia has been cooking another content offering, so I'll pass it over to her.
Yeah, hey everyone, can y'all hear me? Great to see so many familiar faces. Yeah, so I just dropped a couple links in our chat here, but I think a part of our work at Marth is really doing some coherence and narrative building, and it's been amazing to feature some of your voices in that space. And we have been really focusing, on offering technology and services for land stewards first, taking some of the best thoughts that we see in this space and really creating a comprehensive kind of curriculum through a course we're calling Learning Lab. And it is an online community offering. You can sign up for live interactive webinars, and we've been doing sessions. Yesterday we just had Monty on actually giving introduction to blockchain and regenerative finance to land stewards calling in from around the world. We're going to do a session on biochar next. So if you have any suggestions for content that you're actually hungry or wanting to explore more, please send me a message at community@marth.com. And we will also be at New York Climate Week, and we would love to see you there. So yeah, just send a message. And if you have any fabulous voices that you think should be featured, especially frontline land defenders or people who have amazing stories of, really protecting successfully territories, we would love to celebrate their stories through our platform. So yeah, great to be here with you all. Thank you. I cede my time. And next up is Open Civics.
Thank you, Matthew. Thank you, Sophia. Let's see. I've seen Benjamin and I've seen Patricia.
Benjamin will be jumping in. He
Great.
should be here.
Great. If you can get a 4.5 minute timer started so you have 30 seconds, you're good. You're rolling.
All right, we're rolling. Yeah, it's such an honor to be among so many friends and allies. Thank you so much for having us. So Open Civics, really first and foremost is a design philosophy. And so that's not really as much of an update, but I think it has relevance for the kind of go forward strategy that we're pursuing in the bioregional space. We're really trying to bring this design philosophy of thinking in networks and thinking in terms of commoning as kind of foundational shared understandings for how we develop shared infrastructure for the bioregional movement. And so maybe if you have been seeing me on any of my social media or LinkedIn, you've noticed I've been publishing a lot around this sort of bioregional coordination frame. That was what I presented on at the R3.0 Confluence series. And really what I'm trying to point to here is directly responding to some of the kind of early tensions in our movement space, both at the local level among bioregional organizers as well as at the global level. I think because of the worldview that we're coming out of, still using the infrastructure of institutions and our kind of traditional economic thinking, we can sometimes get stuck in either or. It's either this organization doing this, and so if I do it, I'm a threat to them, or we're not officially part of that group, but we're doing aligned work. How do we actually stay connected? And so Open Civics is really trying to support with the interstitial connective tissues that support the interoperability and connectivity, and also a kind of design philosophy that we call functional pluralism. This idea that we can actually all stay within a shared commons without having to collapse into, building a new alliance or a new organization, which kind of brings me to the on the groundwork that we're doing right now. And I want to give a shout out to the Planetary Regeneration Alliance, which is something that happened last year, and we've kind of been stewing on how to continue that body of work. I think calls like this are really the kind of connective tissue that experiment was trying to point us towards. But we've been really curious, how do we formalize some of those relationships so that we are in tighter coordination with each other as we're providing these services to our bioregional partners? And so I'm really grateful to say that has led to a new project that has been supported by people on this call, in particular, receiving some funds from Regen Network, as well as some funds from SporkDAO, an event host in the blockchain space, who provided some initial budget for us to try to create this interstitial coordination space for people who are providing services to the bioregional movement. And so our goal in this next phase of that project is to create the initial governance framework that allows for people to attest to who is part of this commons, and that connoting governance rights to allocate a shared treasury so that we can align the financial incentives for us to coordinate shared resourcing to our projects. And this, so we're excited to share more about that as we kind of ship the initial governance MVP this fall. And look forward to being able to invite you to participate in that, share your intellectual property into the commons if you choose, and then receive the benefits of being kind of a peer attested member of the regen movement. We also think that it's very important for us to protect the IP of the regen meme itself and what that means. And then we're also working on Gitcoin infrastructure. Monty, who's on this call, we've been working with him directly to be able to allocate a larger amount of funds to the domain of Ethereum localism, which is really how can we apply decentralized technologies in the context of the bioregional movement. So we'll have more to share about how you can participate in those grant rounds later this fall. That will be happening in October. And then I'm also excited to share that we're working on an early iteration of creating DAO tooling that is Web 2.5, which we feel is really essential for the grant making part of bioregional financing facilities. We want to be able to empower everyday citizens to pool capital and make grants democratically without having to go through the long learning journey of maintaining your private keys and being on chain. But how can we take the transparency and the democratic resource allocation of blockchain and bring that into a form factor that's more approachable for the bioregional movement? And we also want to work with R 3.0 on bioregional knowledge commenting and the kind of underlying technical infrastructure that enables peer-to-peer sharing of these patterns and templates.
Thank you so much, Benjamin. It's so fun to see all the interconnections of collaboration that are already here present. I invite us into 20 seconds of wiggling and moving your bodies and waking them up from these stiff little shoulder and head things we become when we're just looking at these things. Breathe in Gaia's lovely, lovely air. Give it back to her. Yay. Okay. Penny, are you feeling ready? Are you the one presenting?
Yep, I'm
Cool.
ready.
Well, please
Thanks
start
so
your
much.
4.5 minute timer and let you roll with it.
All right. Thanks, Tyler, for inviting us into this, and I'm glad to be with you all today. My name is Penny Heipel from the Design School for Regenerating Earth, and we're a learning community of people practicing regeneration at the bioregional scale and building a planetary network of learning exchanges among those people. And let me get to my slides. Just to give a brief history of how the design school was born, my partner Joe Brewer wrote a book back in 2020 called The Design Pathway for Regenerating Earth. And during that time, he also launched a community called the Earth Regenerators, which was initially just a study group for the book to explore the ideas in the design pathway. And then it grew to a large number of people, 4,000 people, and a lot of diverse activities. So it was a really dynamic community. And during that same time, he moved to Barichara, Colombia, and started to attempt to live into the design pathway here by organizing bioregionally here in Barichara. And then in 2023, myself and Joe, we launched the Design School for Regenerating Earth with the purpose of helping to catalyze bioregional organizing around the world, not just here in Barichara, but help other people organize around the world and create that learning exchange across bioregions. And then in 2024, we hosted a 7th-generation bioregional Earth Summit, partnering with the Legacy Project in the Greater Takaranto bioregion, which brought about 7,000 people. It was a mix of in-person and online to the summit. And then we're just continuing the planetary scaling now. in 2025. Within the design school itself, in the online aspect, what we do is we have between the March equinox and the September equinox, we hold a combination of learning journeys and inner space work. So the learning journeys are the outer work, the inner space is the inner work, and we do those together because we think it's so important to do both together in this work. So you can see on the left, first we had a learning journey on what is a design school. Then we had one on birthing bioregional learning centers, and then now we're just finishing up one on how to organize your bioregion. And on the right side, you see the pairing of the inner work that we do alongside those learning journeys. And then on the bottom here, the ground for all of this is actually the organizing in the bioregions themselves. So activating that organizing and then the ongoing organizing that we're continuing to do across the network. And then between September and March, we have different kinds of activities in the school. So we have other kinds of courses happening. We have a PDC. We're going to be having a course with 1,000 landscapes coming in, other kinds of courses. We have themed dialogues and bioregional update sessions where organizers come together to share updates from their bioregions. We have member-led activities, design labs and guilds and work groups, continuing inner space activities, and then we have self-guided learning and some hubs coming together in the bioregions using our platform to organize in their hubs. And so now what I want to do is pass to Elias McCatcher, who's also here on the call, and he's going to talk a little bit about the design school community as a living food forest. He is coming on as our community soil tender in the design school. So Elias, please.
Thank you, Penny. Happy to be here. My name is Elias. I'm calling from the Mediterranean bioregion, more specifically from a small town called Chebba in the southern shore of the Mediterranean basin. I'm a professional permaculture designer and educator, and I'm also a regenerative farmer and gardener. I joined the design school 2 years ago, and today I have the great privilege and honor to be the design school community soil tender. The design school is about to start a new phase where we will be organizing as a living food forest, where every layer is celebrated from the ground cover to the canopy trees. We cultivate our community as a resilient, thriving ecosystem of learning and connection. And I want to put an invitation here for everyone interested in earth regeneration. Bring your roots and step into our ecosystem. Join our community of practice, designed like a forest, alive, layered, and abundant. Thank you.
Thank you, everybody.
Thank you, Penny and Elias. Wonderful. Okay, we got BioFi Project up next, which means I need to share my screen.
Thank you, Tyler.
Be presenting. There we go.
I got a timer up and ready to go. Thanks everyone for coming today. What an awesome turnout and so many cool presentations. The BioFi Project, for those of you that aren't familiar, is a think and do tank, and I'm going to tell you a little bit about what we've been up to over the last year. So we are working on building a new layer in the global financial architecture of financial institutions that are aligned with living systems principles. And we call these institutions bioregional financing facilities. And they aim to close the gap that we've heard so many people talk about today between funders and the people on the ground doing regenerative work. Next slide, please, Tyler. BFFs, short for bioregional financing facilities, put their resources in service to these three objectives. They drive the decentralization of financial resource governance, they organize synergistic portfolios of projects across bioregions, and they catalyze the transition to a regenerative economy. Next slide, please. So the BioFi Project over the course of this year has been working across 5 different membranes that I'm going to go through quickly. Next slide. So globally, we're working to share the bioregional financing facility framework and the narrative in the BioFi book. Next slide. We've curated and are adding all the time to our BioFi resource garden. Here, bioregional organizing teams can see a variety of different resources, some created by us, some created by partners, including on the call today. And you can see offerings from our technical partners and connect with them directly for support. Next slide. So these are the technical partners that have joined our network over the last year. And at the global level, we also have our 600-person and growing BioFi community of practice, where we host deep dives into particular tools and frameworks in the BioFi world. And we also host what we call field building calls, where we learn about work of particular bioregional organizing teams. And occasionally, we even host pretty fun in-person meetups, picnics, that sort of thing. Next slide. Okay, so then zooming in a little bit to a more specific geography, we have decided to focus in the Americas to build bioregional financing facilities. And from January through June of this year, we ran our first BioFi cultivator, and we invited 22 different bioregional organizing teams into that learning and design journey. You can see the first half here, and Tyler, you can go to the next slide. Here's the second half of them. So they spanned, as you can see, from Alaska to Argentina, from the Pacific to the Atlantic. And we went on this really cool journey together where those teams created bioregional financing facilities. And at the end of it, 18 of 22 of them were ready to present their bioregional financing facilities to the world and start fundraising. Next slide, Tyler. So here you can see our purpose was to work at the speed of trust to accelerate anti-fragile, investment-ready bioregional financing facilities that catalyze the transition to bioregional regenerative economies. And I'll share the link in the chat to our website where you can watch 18 8-minute presentations about all of these bioregional financing facilities and learn more about them and connect with the teams directly. Okay, next slide. So on this next phase of the journey, we're continuing to work with those cultivator teams around specific needs. And then we're working really deeply with what we call our BFF co-design partnerships. And there are two bioregions that we have these BFF co-design partnerships with, the Amazon Sacred Headwaters Alliance, which Atosa is on the call today. And next slide, Tyler. And Salmon Returns, which is working in Salmon Nation in the Pacific Northwest region of North America. And we've been walking with these two teams from the beginning of the year, side by side, doing deep relationship building work and spending a lot of time on the ground in their bioregions. And in this next phase, we're working with them on fundraising, storytelling, portfolio mapping, and designing biocultural credits. So that's a little bit of what we're up to. It's been a really full first part of the year, and we're looking forward to going a bit deeper and focusing a bit more narrowly for the rest of the year. Thank you, Tyler.
Right on. Thank you, Samantha. Okay, I've lost my list. Bioregional Weaving Labs. Is that Karen?
Yes, hi.
Wonderful.
Thank you so much for inviting me and be here. Shall I share my screen?
Please do.
Yeah.
If you can set a 4.5-minute timer for yourself, that's
Yes,
supportive too.
I'll try. Oh, what is this? Allow.
We can see your screen great.
Yeah? Okay, great. Yeah, so I'm calling in from Europe. I might be one of the fewer. I have the feeling that we are with a lot of American initiatives, but I can be wrong. So great that we connect through this event. So we have a mission as the Bioregional Weaving Labs Collective. It's a collective of multiple organizations in Europe to model an infrastructure for communities of change makers to restore, protect, and regenerate systems in their bioregions. And just to give you an idea, where we're at, we now have 35 strategic partners, 7 bioregional weaving labs in 7 countries, 400 system entrepreneurs gathered around those labs in trying to form systemic portfolios to restore and protect and regenerate their landscapes. And we have an interesting development, very much also inspired by your work, BioFi Project, to see if we can work with 8 emerging labs at the same time in the Netherlands, like a kind of program where we take them together on a journey to develop their bioregional weaving labs. So it's exciting to see how that goes, and I would love to learn from you, Samantha and Tyler, how you experienced that group cohort approach. And we have a kind of I'm always hesitant to call it a methodology, because you can't capture this work in a model and in a methodology, but we do see some patterns across all those bioregional weaving teams and their partners. So we've tried to capture that. So see this just as a guide for the work we do, and we try to support bioregional weaving labs in each phase that we see them grow into on these different pathways. So building community, build capacity also of the weaving team, build the project portfolios, activate change makers through those portfolios, and develop financing mechanisms. Also very much inspired by the book Bioregional Financing Facilities. We work closely with one of the co-authors, Leon Seefeld. Let me see, how does it... Oh, I need to go the other side. So now I didn't know what to focus on, but we are working now on a partnership with Ashoka, Commonland and Wire Group within this bigger collective to see how we can develop these financing facilities, bringing in all our expertise that we each have. And we try to do that with 3 partners in 3 bioregions in Spain, France and the Netherlands. And we're talking about quite big numbers, and that is a challenge because we all know how difficult it is to unlock financing. On the other hand, it's inspiring me that we are talking bigger numbers, because it does bring us into contact with interesting parties. And I'm confident that we will learn a lot on the way how to eventually unlock this financing. And this is all draft, so it's not prepared to present. Actually, this is from an internal slide, but this is very much also recognizable from the book of Samantha, that this is what it could look like. You have multiple bioregional financing facilities actually in a region, trying to attract that blended financing, and then through a shared governance with really a much bigger representation of bottom-up governance compared to more traditional financing. So that is what we're trying to explore, like what can that look like in each of those regions, and those 3 regions obviously learn together also on this process. We have also the idea that to only set up such a facility, we actually need grant funding to have a finance weaver that is really knowledgeable on the ground to work with all those different capital providers. Also, we noticed that each region is
I
so
apologize. I
different.
love what you're presenting, and just want to let you know I'm tracking you're a good bit over the 5 minutes, and so I'm curious
Oh, I'm
if you
so
could wrap it
sorry.
up.
Please, no, this was it. This was the last slide. I just wanted to indicate that we see that only to set up these facilities, yeah, we still need to unlock a lot of money before we get to the portfolio funding. So that was it. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Karen. Okay, we're at the last presentation. Monty, you slid right in.
Yay, let's do
Well
it.
done, Monty. Glad you showed up.
Yeah.
Start my timer now. Hopefully you can see that. Thanks for having me. Really grateful to be here amongst so many regens, and Tyler, Samantha, everyone for hosting. Just really quickly introduce ReFi DAO for some context, and then I'll share some kind of latest updates. ReFi DAO is a network society to regenerate the Earth, and more specifically focused on the intersection of blockchain and Web3 technologies in the regeneration space. We've got a kind of network of what we call ReFi local nodes, essentially bridging this ReFi Web3 finance tech space with the local action on the ground. Kind of similar to BFFs, I guess, although not always by a regional scale, at various different local scales. And yeah, we have this network across the globe that do all sorts of things, from hackathon projects to measuring tree planting and ecological efforts and putting that on the blockchain. And if you want to learn more about blockchain for ecological regeneration, there's a Matt Earth Learning Lab coming out very soon. And yeah, we've been supporting growing this network across the globe and run several funding rounds to continue doing that. We actually helped with the BioFi Pathfinders round, getting some funding to some bioregions, and that was when kind of ReFi Mediterranean, our first bioregional scale ReFi node, was also born. So yeah, we've been growing this community with ReFi DAO. But also more recently have kind of grown that into what we're calling a regen coordination. So we have ReFi DAO, but there's also these other really aligned networks, Green Pill Network doing similar things, and Bloom, you may have heard of Matt Earth, of course, and the BioFi community. And so starting really, with Green Pill, bringing these networks together to have more coordination, shared funding rounds, developing resources together, and really, yeah, starting to go towards this kind of network nation concept as an evolution of the of nation states, which I don't really have time to cover now. But what I would like to share quickly is that we've been running a successive amount of funding rounds, starting quite small, but slowly sort of scaling up the quantities here. And yeah, we right now are in the planning mode. I think Benjamin alluded to it, in October for our next funding round, which really will be supporting local funding programs. So if you're a regional organizer and you're able to raise some funds locally and are okay trialing some new tools, then we can also provide some match funding through that program that is coming up. So if that sounds interesting to you, you can send me a message, and we'll be releasing more kind of proper details about the full funding round very soon. And essentially what we're trying to do here is, this is forked obviously from the BioFi book and extended on, but really, yeah, get that flywheel of regenerative funding going from all the financial resources. And of course, we're focused on a lot of that crypto capital that sits there, and how do we channel that into more regenerative efforts. So I think I'll leave it there for now. I have been doing also some work in this Common Impact Data Standard and Impact Measurement and Data Commons, which there's a lot of stuff there, but basically making it easier for bioregions and communities to collect impact data on the projects that they're funding and be able to aggregate that at the portfolio scale to make that legible to funders, so more funders are interested in funding that work. So yeah, I'll leave it there. Really grateful to be on this call and amongst so many awesome regens. Thanks so much, everyone, and excited for the rest of the call.
Thank you, Monty. Amazing. That is our final presentation, and I invite us all to take a deep, slow breath and just allow our bodies to start to digest all of that. And inviting another breath just to tune in to what the body's feeling like after receiving all of that. And if you feel called to share, one word or a quick phrase in the chat about what your body's feeling like right now, please do. Knowing that at this point in the call, we're going to move into a brief just chat between those organizations that presented. And then we'll have 20 minutes of Q&A at the end for the folks who've tuned in to listen and learn. And so, knowing that we've got 9 organizations who presented today and only 15 minutes for this little chat, I'm going to offer a prompt, and I trust us to navigate these 15 minutes in whatever way feels most generative, knowing that there's a larger group here. And so I think there's a lot of detailed technical questions we can follow up later on. But I'd love to just invite like noticings. What are we noticing here in this space? What are we noticing, and what are we finding ourselves curious about as we feel all these different presentations? To be clear, this 15 minutes I want to reserve for just the folks who presented. So I see your hand, Edward, and then we'll love to have you ask the first question once we get to like the 40-minute mark.
I can share one observation, Tyler. I guess just starting from the framing that BioFi Project offered around coordination, and in particular, seeing the work that Benjamin presented, using that term bioregional coordination as a kind of a marker, and hearing the diversity of work going on that may not be formally coordinated. So I guess the question for me is, how can coordination emerge both on a kind of formal or intentional or explicit side, but also how can we bring about coordination that actually is emergent or implicit, if you will. That's sort of what's resonating for me right now. Jack.
Maybe just to keep the shout out train moving, thank you, Bill. It was really preparing for the R 3.0 confluence that I had to like really sit down and gather my thoughts around bioregional governance. And I came to this notion of bioregional coordination being more primary than governance, because governance implies we're steering one thing together, whereas coordination is more about how do we all move in consort. And so what really distilled through that process was that bioregional coordination is the non-rivalrous stewardship of 8 forms of capital to support the regeneration of a bioregion. And so to then call out Open Future Coalition, this idea of dock ports, I think, is really crucial. Where how do these flows of different types of capital, whether that be coordination, sending out email blasts to invite people to things, or financial grants programs that flow funding across different scopes and scales, how can we think about these different forms of capital, and how can we arrange the dock ports so that those of us working across the movement can flow those different forms of capital to each other?
Because Benjamin pointed in our direction, I'll pick up the thread and just weave the something that's been really clarifying this year in our work with OFC, with Open Future Coalition, has been to really look at the commons infrastructure for collective action and really focus in on the interstitial space. And infrastructure to us is, financial infrastructure, it's social infrastructure, it's digital infrastructure, it's actual tangible infrastructure on the ground for things like bolstering local food sheds and other physical tangible infrastructures that deeply needs investment at a local scale. So I just offer that I think that there's a lot of us here that are trying to understand per what we have been naming so much that Benjamin can name it, like what are these dock ports, what are these natural win-win scenarios where we naturally kind of find the intersection and right fit that doesn't have us all amalgamated, because obviously in a living systems pattern we need the diversification of all of these efforts bringing up at the same time to be healthful and vital and to be diversified. And yet there is something in a living systems pattern that does have context, that does have coordination, that does have symbiosis. And I think that's what we're aiming to try to understand how to better do. But I think that continue to look both at the solutions and strategies that we can find of like, well, we could play with prototypes here, we could trial things here that really exist in the commons. I also think we have to keep looking, and you pointed there, Benjamin, at the barriers. We have to honestly talk about like what's in the way of our shared fundraising strategies, what's in the way of our ability to actually link each other's tech up, what's in the way of moving the financial resources and governing and stewarding those capitals together. And I think the more that we have authentic conversations that shapeshift out of a paradigm of fear and scarcity and competition towards that radical, liberatory, collaborative approach, I think we're just learning how to do that in a very fast moving time where we need to do it quickly and effectively, but we need to do it deeply as well. And we need to do it in a dismantling, systems of oppression and colonialization that really help us radically liberate what's possible for us in that common space. So we're aiming our arrow there, but we're also learning. So we invite you all to come and figure out and learn with us. I think experimentation and iteration is important so we can learn by applying and doing. And then what did we learn? And then let's apply and do again with a lot of openness and transparency of the learning curve that we're all experiencing together. And we got to get it on the ground. We got to help Edward and others doing this stuff in place as much as we can. We have to elevate and lift them up and make sure they have the resources they need and they're involved in these conversations to guide us as intermediaries and allies and providers.
I can pick up on that. One thing that Tyler and I and our team have been feeling is that we want to get deeper into experiments in this next phase of the work and like experiments in place and with these amazing collaborators, many of which are on the call today that have these beautiful tools, beautiful frameworks, principles, all these things. It's like, okay, who are the bioregional organizing teams that are ready to engage in a particular deep dive experiment? And that's kind of what we're calling in this next phase. And it sounds like, so many of us on the call are feeling drawn to that and already moving in that direction.
Yeah, I also see these different ways of packaging information because I think this community here in the room is very interested also in the deeper philosophies behind things, theories, modeling, a very intellectual kind of approach. While we work with practitioners on the ground that need a different type of, chunks, short information that they can practically use. And sometimes I think we will all struggle. Even when you talk to funders, you want to, not, yeah, you want to take them seriously. So you start talking about the complexity, but still they find it overwhelming. So it's, for me, the challenge to know who you're talking to or servicing for and how to package the information. I don't know if that resonates for you.
I'd love to jump in on that. I really appreciate that. And I think there's a bit of that sentiment in the chat as well. And at least from our experience with Learning Lab, we're working with land stewards directly. And I think sometimes I myself flippantly use the term bioregionalism or Web3 or whatever it is. And my challenge at this time is actually making sure, can people with their feet in the soil really like get it, and it's not a question of, so this is my only kind of I think that this is a really fertile territory, and I really would love to actually offer Learning Lab as a place where if you have a concept that you feel is really important and can be more widely understood, that's our job, is translating that and making that, a package that we can deliver as a gift to our greater community. So we're not in just our little, intellectual silos, if you will. But this work is so important, and it shouldn't be squandered with complex vocabulary,
Maybe to pick up on that, something that's alive for me in this work, in being a bridge, or many people on this call being bridges across different kinds of worlds, is this sort of slow and steady work of building relationships with people and like forming peer relationships. And I think it like inevitably starts there and it propagates that way, but there's oftentimes very little to like show for it, or like how do you make that legible without sort of corrupting it in some ways. So I'm really enthusiastic, like in some ways, like trust, how trust scales, acknowledging that it must be held between beings in like genuine connection is such a complex and meaningful question. And I run into challenges with knowing how to navigate bioregionalism because I feel like I'm trying to understand like how to really make operable and healthy, meaningful one-on-one connections that seem to me like the essential nodes in the net to create the thing. So like that doesn't scale very easily. Or it takes time and meaningful like relationship. You have to show up. There's no shortcut to that. And so like I'm interested in like holding that tension with you all, that we all probably have like meaningful, like you're collateralizing your heart and yourself on the line in building relationships. And so how does that's not fungible, it's not very easily transferable. And so if we're talking about a scaled movement, that's challenging. And that's something I feel really viscerally, that I feel like all of us are holding in our respective contexts, both resist becoming a big networked thing because it's so intimate and yet it has to in order for it to have kind of network effects. So that's what a lot of this is bringing alive for me.
I know I've already spoken here, so I'm going to try to be really brief on this one, but something else I'm tracking in the space is the need for um, in the bioregional knowledge commons context, patterns and primitives and protocols for the formation of local solidarity networks as a kind of like at the landscape level. Because I think those are the kinds of primary relationships that Austin is describing, that I think oftentimes our work is happening at such a scale that we forget the capacity building and the resourcing that needs to go to the very front lines where those relationships are built, and what are the tools and structures that can empower those people with a toolkit to go out and do that local organizing. I think that's very something we could all work on together a lot more.
Cool. I'm gonna step in here and just bring this little portion of the call to a close before we open it to broader audience questions. Just to say again a thanks for all the organizations showing up for this and doing the challenge of a 5-minute presentation. And as I laid out in the invitation to this, I want to take a minute here to actually coordinate and decide who might be up for offering the next seasonal variation of this, knowing that this was the first, it was an experiment and we're learning from it. And it had a particular design. We had 9 5-minute presentations, which has its pros and it has its cons. And my request to the orgs who came here is just to consider, are you up for convening the next one at a time that will work for you, knowing that you can design it really how you wish, and that it's up to you to choose who you want to invite beyond this core group that gathered here today. So I'm seeking a volunteer and see if we can resolve that before opening it up to the audience.
Could I volunteer to collaborate with someone else on it?
You very well can.
We'll collaborate with you, Austin.
Cool, that would be awesome. Hi, Aaron and Claire.
Good to see you.
Hey.
Nice.
I'd also be happy to help.
Same. I would love to join.
Likewise. Yeah, me too. Nice to see you, Sting.
Wow. Beautiful. Austin, I'll let you kind of source this, knowing that you got a handful of folks down to collaborate with you, and I'll send an email thread after this later today, just kind of recapping how we set the frame and establish some protocols around this at the beginning. But I look forward to us evolving this as we go. Thank you. Okay, let's turn to the audience. I know we kept you waiting a while. Edward, I saw your hand come up a while ago, and so I want to turn it to you and then Claire, if you're still holding a question.
Yeah, it has been kind of dealt with already, but after 15 or more years working with regeneration, it's amazing to see how much progress we've made and how many people are involved and how many people on the screens I can relate to. What I'm missing is how do we actually extend to audiences which are not only white, like in this meeting. The South, the global South is completely out, and there's a lot of wisdom, a lot of this whole spiritual dimension is not represented in the technocratic, Eurocentric methodologies, and they can really bring fundamental shifts into our mindsets. This is not mechanistic. This is not academic. We need to really move to the human space where we are nature. It's not the just saying, yes, we are nature. It's actually living the we are nature. So that's the challenge I think we have. How do we actually expand this to turn it into a global movement that really will make change? The only way to scale is not a mechanistic way. And scaling in Latin America is completely different than scaling in Europe, and especially the funding to scale and how do you actually do that? But it's not only the giving, how do we set up a structure to receive from the bioregions all this wisdom, all this knowledge? That's basically my worry 24 hours a day.
Thank you, Edward. I didn't hear a question in there as much as just you expressing that wisdom and that concern. So thank you. I'm going to pass it over to Claire, and then we'll hear from Sumit afterwards.
Yeah, I would love to just, I think Austin really picked up on a theme that was coming up that I just really want to say. With Regenerate Cascadia, what we've seen and in any of the community work is that you often have people who can speak quite well to stuff, and those are the people we hear from. But the people who are doing the community work are doing the work and are not, those voices are not represented. But what's lost is the relationality and the coordination that actually is happening. And so I just want to say, Edward, what you were saying, like there's some very deep work when we start looking at who is doing the work and then inviting that in, but we have to be able to include more. I would love actually to just ask, if I guess the question is like the actual work when it's happening, the network of relationships and the depth and the length of those, like how long have those relationships been holding is a really good indicator. I'm just interested in the groups that are doing that work because I'm not sure that we use that lens so much as like looking at it's not a figment of imagination of what a community can look like. It actually is a community that functions because those relationships have held over a period of time. So yeah, was just curious about the projects that have come forward that are looking at that.
Thanks, Claire. Is anyone from the group of presenting orgs feeling called to offer a response?
Tyler, not a response to Claire's, so maybe bracketing that for just a moment, but just going back to Edward's point, which I really want to underline the importance of globalizing the bioregional movement, which I think is fundamentally important, and we are at early stages right now. So Edward, I just wanted to reinforce that I'm seeing similar things as what you're seeing, and I think it's going to take real conscious effort to do the kinds of bridging. I think there's a long history of bioregionalism in the global north and the west, And there is really amazing work happening elsewhere in the bioregional movement. And to note this linguistic divide, there's a lot of work that isn't calling itself bioregionalism. So I invite everyone to try to move beyond the comfort zones of global North and Western Hemisphere work, while still continuing to reinforce the great work there. Check.
Thanks, Bill. Jamaica, are you chiming in on this thread?
Second time in this round, I really want to offer Samit the floor, but I just want to say I'm thinking about the Blessed Unrest and Paul Hawkinsworth that illuminates the fact that the largest movement that exists on this planet is the response mechanism of people of place in their local context, doing what must be done every day to shore up their own communities' resilience, the future for their children. To me, this is already happening all around the world, and it's our perception that's off, that we're somehow in this disconnect, rather than looking for, like, being learners and listeners for where else this is happening. The bioregional movement, even if we don't co-opt that term with it, is everywhere. It's people of place responding to what they have to do. And I think when we make that visible and find the common ground amongst those efforts, I think we feel a lot more strengthened that we don't always have to solve for on behalf of. We need to cooperate with, align with, and serve and learn about and uplift and elevate stories that aren't being told, particularly in peoples who aren't in a Northern, Western framework of privilege. So I just want to acknowledge, I think this is already happening all around the world. We're just not telling that story well enough to see how effectively we could support and learn forward. But I think it's already happening, and that is bolstering. I think we can do more on our end to make sure to build bridges across where this is already happening in the world and figure out how we can be actual allies to each other.
Thanks, Jamaica. Samit, I'd love to go over to you.
Yes, thank you. Thank you, everyone. First, just a deep gratitude to all of you. I'm from India, and yeah, it's interesting what Edward and Bill spoke about, and it's 12:15 right now. It's midnight. So the fact that I have to be on this call because I really want to tune into what's happening globally and how do we bring some of those learnings and also, transfer some of our learnings to the global movement is something which kept me awake tonight. Right. So, but yeah, talking about, in fact, I wouldn't even want to call it global North and South, because when we start using those terms, it's also about othering, and who's the North and who's the South and who made those definitions. So I think, and like what I think Edward spoke about, the way, so let me just maybe step back a little and say that we're weaving a movement called Regenerating India, which it just seems like so big for us, here, and we're trying to do this as India as a bioregion. Now, within that, we have started chapters like Regenerating Punjab, which is our agriculture state, and then Regenerating Delhi, and we're doing these chapters, etc. So now, when we go back, so for example, I was with some farmers in Punjab last week, and when I'm talking to them, it's things that they've been doing for years. When I talk to them about, let's do regenerative agriculture, let's move beyond organic and natural farming, and let's go into regenerative agriculture and how we work with the soil, etc. So for them, the wisdom is embodied. It's what they have learned and what they are supposed to be doing, ideally, if the government wasn't interfering with chemicals and the story just goes on. So this is one example of, bringing forth how, and I don't even want to say for us, but like, let's say for this part of the earth, right? Everything is so embodied and coming from the soil. And I'm sure that's how it is even in other parts of the world. It's not about us and them. And when we talk about, we talk about IDGs, and when we look at those frameworks, it's how we've been doing it in our yoga philosophies, just being and relating. And so thank you, Edward, for what you were talking about. But for us, a lot of frameworks, when I look at some of the frameworks which being presented here, and a lot of it is resonating, but some part of it is not resonating so much because it's what we've been doing. So I think between languaging and linguistics, if we were to look at doing work collectively and having more sharings and cross-pollinations is something what would, I think, be the need of the hour. And that works, and that I'm saying for across, it's not just about what the South has to learn, because you like, if I look at it from a movement, you guys are way ahead of how, like, you're already doing regenerative financing. We are sowing seeds right now. But maybe a part of that was happening like 50 years ago in cooperative movements. So it's also going back to our ancient wisdom of the things that were already germinated, they have already germinated, but then we've killed them because we've been trying to ape the West because we were colonized. And so I don't know if I'm making a lot of sense, but for me, it's about coming back into full circle and working as Earthians and a collective family instead of saying north, south, east, west, and And yes, there is a lot to learn from each other. So that's my humble offering.
Thank you for that humble offering, Sumit. Really appreciate it. Atosa, see your hand.
Well, this is such a great conversation and all of its dimensions. And, this is a topic that comes a lot among our networks of Indigenous nations and the headwaters. And, it's obviously the whole bioregional frame is it's almost a response in relationship to the dominant system. So in a way that in a way it's adaptive to something that is coming at them. They bioregional planning that we did often was a big debate. We had the same exact debate, and eventually the consensus was, from a perspective of land defenders on the ground who are in alliances and solidarities, they're already practicing this, but in order to change a dominant system, we need frames that are basically transforming the dominant system. So they could see why such a frame is a useful tool for what they've, Sumit very clearly stated, which is, if you're a steward defending land, do you call yourself a steward? No, it's the outside world that's calling you a steward. Many of our frames are in relationship to the dominant system. So anyway, that's just some offering, but I'd love the idea of a dialogue among epistemologies and ontologies of indigenous and modern world, because it is through that relationship that we're finding coherence.
Thank you, Atosa. This is so rich. So glad we're doing this. Mateo.
Yeah, it's lovely to be on here with all of you and to be hearing about so many projects that I haven't been exposed to in the past. So this is really wonderful. I'm a student of design, and I'm really curious to hear from the various people who presented today. What kind of pinch points are you running up against in your projects? What are some of the limitations that you are attempting to negotiate right now? Is my question making sense, Tyler?
I think so. I had some trouble with your connection during your question, but I at least experienced that the gist of it came through clearly. I'm curious if that was the same for others. I heard it as, for the organizations who presented, what are some pinch points, pain points that you're experiencing in your work right now? Yeah. Caitlin?
I couldn't find the hand raised emoji, sorry. Yeah, I think glimmers of this came up from a couple different shares, but I would share that I think that something that's been voiced in a lot of different configurations or blooming collaborations. I even saw it coming up in the chat here where a bunch of us have had wonderful threads of conversation about collaboration that have come up over past months or years, but just don't have our own internal organizational capacity, budget, bandwidth to be able to actually resource the exploration itself, which is such an important space, that kind of liminal space for interoperability, for collaboration, is often, that interstitial is often a space that itself is not resourced. And I think that the need to actively, intentionally resource some of that exploratory work, some of that co-development work as it's emerging is so rich and so needed, and something that has, I think, come up time and time again as a barrier for some of these more concerted collaborations to emerge.
I can build on that. Oh, sorry, go ahead, Monty.
No, go ahead, Samantha. I can go after you.
Yeah, I'll be quick just to build on that totally, Katie. And there's resourcing opportunities to explore collaboration between the organizations that presented here and the whole broader network of organizations. But I've also seen a lot of challenge, and I think many people on the call could speak to this today, in resourcing the process of bioregional organizing, which is often messy and slow and deeply relational. And working with the 22 teams we did to design bioregional financing facilities, many of those teams were just kind of pulling it together and doing it in their spare time and weren't resourced to engage in that design work in a deep way. And that's something we'd like to see more of in the future.
Yeah, just quickly also following up on that point, and I think it's definitely a resonant point, and would just offer that for example, with Benjamin and Open Civics, there's this kind of initiative framing which you've just spun up to kind of bring different groups together to collaborate on something. And there's sources of funding that we can access, especially if we're talking about various Web3 integrations, say with Open Future Collective or other organizations, to fund various working groups that could support that integration and collaboration work. So maybe we can bring that into a conversation, but just offering that up as well.
Great. Just quickly on the question of what the pinch points are, and also tying into what Atosa was talking about, I think that there's a sort of on the ground, a relationship between the on the ground work and the broader coordination across bioregions work. I think that having intermediation or interstitial resourcing would be really cool. So one of the things that I really appreciate is Magenta Light and the Bloom network, and how they have a mechanism for providing compensation not only to on-the-ground regenerative practitioners, but to a layer of documenters who are documenting what those practitioners are doing on the ground. So doing some sort of division of labor, if you will. I know that a bioregional knowledge commons is both the doers also documenting the knowledge, but that may be beyond what practitioners can do. So doing some of this kind of smart parsing out of roles could be really key. Jack.
Great. Karen, I saw you come off mute, and maybe you'll be, yeah, let's give the last minute to you, and then I'll close us out.
Yeah, okay, no, so pinch points many, but to maybe give as food for thought is that we are experimenting with creating a new type of job. So the name Weaver, we really position it as a new type of job. So that's how we also asked for funding. And now there are two funders who specifically fund the role of, we call that portfolio weavers. So by positioning it as a role, we get more funding than if we position it as a process. So maybe that's good to think about.
Thank you. Resonate with that. Wow. I see Michelle Holiday called this a wildly fertile gathering, and it was encouraging. I too am feeling encouraged. Thank you all so much for being here. Please, if it feels right for you, come off mute and just say farewell. And thank you so much, Austin, for volunteering to take on the next one with the help of a group of folks. Appreciate you all for being here and the great questions, great perspectives.
Thanks everyone for
Thank you,
coming.
everyone.
Thank you.
Sam, thanks, Tyler.
Talk to you
Everybody.
Good to see you.
Tyler,
Thank
Samantha.
you.
Everybody soon.
Off to my local bioregional call.
Yes.
Yay. Doing the
Take care,
work.
all.
You guys are awesome.
Bye-bye.
Take care.